the other thing that we really saw come to light this year is the rise of these retail media networks that are all modeled on Amazon. So basically you have retailers leveraging their customer data into these substantial advertising businesses.
Hey gang, it's Thursday, December 16th. Jasmine, Paul, and listeners, welcome to the Behind the Numbers Daily, an eMarketer podcast made possible by Basis Technologies. I'm Marcus, and today I'm joined by two folks. Let's meet them. We start with one of our senior analysts covering social media. It's Jasmine Emberg.
Hey Marcus, hey everyone.
Hey Jasmine, thanks for hanging out. We're also joined by our principal analyst who heads up our advertising and media practice. It's Paul Werner.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Hey chat. So, today's fact. A couple of facts about Crater Lake in Oregon. Have you guys been? Anyone been?
I haven't. No.
I have not.
No. All right. Maybe this will entice you. Crater Lake will dissuade you. It's some of these. This is a bit terrifying. Crater Lake, which lives in the bottom left quadrant of Oregon, is nearly 2,000 feet deep. That's too deep. Okay, for me to be in that water. That's 1.5 Empire State Buildings. If you can't picture how deep that is, that makes it the deepest lake in the US and the 9th deepest lake in the world. So naturally, you're like, which one's the deepest lake? Or maybe you couldn't care less, and maybe it's just me. But I looked it up because I have nothing better to do.
Lake Baikal?
Whoa!
Did
Paul?
you get it right?
Yes.
Wow.
Who are you, Paul? Who are you really?
I am who I am, but geography is definitely a thing for me. Partly because both of my daughters have been very into it and participated in the National Geographic GeoB in school. So, you know, we made study of geography kind of like a family dinner time activity. But I've always been interested in it. It's
very nice. Well, they/you are spot on. Lake Baikal in Siberia, which is kind of like if you just the middle of China and you go directly up, you run into it when you hit Russia. The deepest is nearly 2.5 times the depth of Crater Lake. Crater Lake was formed by the fall of a volcano, Mount Mazama, 12,000 feet tall volcano erupted and collapsed 7,000 years ago, forming Crater Lake. What's fascinating though is that nobody knows where the water in the lake goes because the lake has no outlets leading to other water sources. The changing water levels of the lake presents interesting scientific questions. Precipitation rates are more than twice the evaporation rates. So there's a lot of water that seemingly goes unaccounted for. There's another reason why I'm not getting in there.
Do you know if it's salt water?
Oh, I don't know. Let's look it up. Live research.
Because I don't know this for a fact, but I think that lakes that don't have outlets tend to be saltwater lakes.
Huh. It is the deepest lake, blah, 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 comes directly from snow and rain. That makes it fresh?
I think it's fresh if it's in Siberia. That would be my guess.
Oh.
Are we talking about Crater Lake now?
Sorry.
Or Crater Lake. Oh,
yeah.
Sorry. I'm confused.
No. We're all over the place. We're all over the map. It is fresh water.
Fresh water. Interesting.
I think that's what the internet thinks. Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Wait, Paul, did you just solve this scientific mystery for everybody?
No.
I think you did.
I don't think so. I mean, I just brought up that something I read that I thought that lakes that don't have an outlet tend to be saltwater lakes, like the Great Salt Lake, but I don't know that for a fact, and it's really all this is pointing to a very convenient assignment for the next time I'm on the weekly listen and I have to pull together dinner party data. So
there we go.
It's a head start. So thank you.
Problem solved. Yeah.
Well, do you know where my mind went to when you brought up the deepest lake?
Go.
The deepest pool. Have either of you seen photographs or videos of the pool in Dubai I think it's 60 meters deep?
Wow.
I think I have, unfortunately, and it's terrifying.
That's crazy.
It is terrifying.
That is
I don't know why, because it's probably safer than any water you can get into, because there's nothing in there that wants to kill you inherently. Maybe not.
Well, the water pressure alone might kill you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
at
thanks,
60
Paul.
meters.
Appreciate that. Just in case you're looking for a reason, Marcus, I got one for you. Anyway, today's real topic, the state of the Triopoly. So, folks, the amount of money being spent on digital ads in America today is 160%, 160% larger than it was 2 years ago. Put another way, the $132 billion industry from 2019 has grown nearly 60% in 2 years. Put another way, digital ad spending used to account for 5 out of 10 total ad dollars in 2019. Today it accounts for 7 out of 10, or $211 billion. Most of that $211 billion, 64%, is made up by just 3 companies. 64% of that 211 made up by just 3 companies: Google, Facebook, and Amazon. You guessed them. These are 3 digital giants that folks are calling the Triopoly. That 64% of US digital ad pie that they will share will be 65% next year. So it's not going anywhere. It's just increasing the share that they're taking. 64 this year to 65% next year of the total digital ad pie. But zoom in a little on these 3, and there's some activity below the surface. Some are increasing their share. Others are losing some between these 3 as they jostle for that 64%. So we're going to go through some of those. We've got our experts in each, and we're going to start with Google because they're the biggest of these players in the digital ad space in the US. And Google has 29%, rounding up, 28.6, 29% share of digital ad pie this year. Paul, what about their digital ad performance has impressed you the most in 2021?
Well, the fact that they had such a phenomenal year in terms of revenue coming off of 2020, when they also did quite well considering the uncertainty in the economy and all the disruptions that year. So Google had a couple of record quarters this year, and to go from 44 billion US ad revenues last year to 60 billion, I mean, that's an increase of 16 billion in revenues. The growth we project for next year and the year after is more moderate, but it's still growing. So that's the biggest takeaway. If we get, I mean, I know we're going to talk about the share of each of the Triopoly companies, and Google is interesting because unlike Facebook and Amazon, its share is generally decreasing.
Mm-hmm.
It went down a little bit in 2021, but we're expecting it to go down more in the next couple of years. Facebook actually went down a little bit in 21, but we're expecting it to increase in the next couple of years. And Amazon has just been on an upward trend. But I think when you just look at the share, you think, uh-oh, what's wrong with Google because they're losing share? And I would say to that really there's nothing specifically wrong with Google. It's just that Amazon is sort of like a runaway train when it comes to the way it's building its ad business. And I know we're going to talk about Amazon a little bit later.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. I mean, 2020, as you said, 44 billion, 2021, 60 billion, but their share does tick down slightly. And then you mentioned this, Paul, stretching out into the future, 29% share for Google this year. Next year, it goes down to 28. The year after, it goes down to 26. Any concern whatsoever there at all? I mean, I know they're going to be increasing the amount of money they make from that 60 billion this year to 66 next year to 72 the year after that. But any concern at all that they're kind of losing the share battle?
Well, yeah. I mean, for starters, the company
they're way out in front, but in terms of going forward.
Yeah, but I mean, even if you project out to 2023, Facebook comes within just over 2 percentage points.
Yeah.
So Facebook is closing that gap. I mean, a few years ago, Google was significantly ahead of Facebook. So that's a concern just when you look at the share of the Triopoly. But I think in a broader sense, what I think is keeping Google executives up at night is what could be potentially an existential threat from TikTok on the video side. And, just in terms of like the presence of the platform and the fact that Google and YouTube have really been sort of at the top of the pyramid for about 15 years, which is almost inconceivable in the world of digital media. But now you're starting to see a lot of, especially young people, engage with TikTok in a way that reminds me of YouTube years ago. The latest thing that struck me was seeing how instructional videos, like how-to videos, are becoming really, really popular on TikTok. And that was something that YouTube had virtually cornered. So in terms of like search and Google and the platform itself, it's definitely still the 800-pound gorilla. And YouTube still is the dominant video player in advertising. But I think there definitely are some threats coming from TikTok and also from Facebook, because Facebook, for all its problems, has been leveraging its ad business particularly on Instagram, and doing very well, just looking at these share numbers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jasmine, let's talk Facebook for a second. 24% share of the digital ad pie in the US this year. They made $50 billion. Last year, they made $38 billion, so up 12 billion in just 1 year. What has impressed you the most with Facebook's 2021 performance?
Well, Paul started to allude to this, but I think Facebook has just proven once again that it's resilient to nearly every headwind that comes its way, and it's continuing to grow its revenues and its share of the total US ad market. I mean, the Facebook files didn't send advertisers running. They proved to be little more than a PR headache for the company, and it's obviously used to those. I think what was different this year, though, is that at the same time that this was happening, Facebook was also facing its first real threat to its ad business, meaning the privacy changes that come from the iOS update, making it harder for Facebook to track and target users. But so far, all that's really done is made it more difficult for Facebook to provide accurate measurement. And at the same time, Android spending on Facebook has increased, and that's partly mitigated some of the slowing spend on iOS.
Do you think that would be the thing that concerns you the most this year and going forward for Facebook?
Based on our forecast going forward, we're not expecting the iOS changes to have that much of an impact on Facebook's ad revenues. I think, what really gives you a hint onto what the biggest concerns would be Facebook Inc.'s recent rebrand to Meta. I mean, on the surface, it seems like it's largely a cosmetic change, but the move is also really an indication of a lot of the problems that are brewing under the surface for Facebook, the Blue app. Mm-hmm. None of these problems are really new. It's shedding younger users. They're going to TikTok primarily. But it's also lost a lot of trust with the public and with lawmakers. And I think the prospect of regulation and probes into its business practices are probably the biggest concern for Facebook in 2022.
Mm-hmm. As Paul mentioned, you got Google. 2019, pre-pandemic, Google's share was 32. Facebook's was 24. And so 8-point gap there in terms of share. Fast forward 2 years to today, and it's a 5-point gap. Fast forward 2 more years to 2023. And as Paul mentioned, it's just a 2-point gap. So Facebook pretty much flat though across those years, 2019 to 2023, 24% back then, 24% in the future. It's Google's share that has been ticking down, and it's been ticking down much to the benefit of Amazon, who has 12% share if you round up, 11.6, 12% this year, 13.3 next year, 14.6 the year after that. Paul, what's impressed you the most about Amazon's digital ad performance in 2021?
Well, there wasn't anything specific in 2021 that I think they did particularly well, other than just continuing to build momentum for this ad business, which when you look at its share over our 5-year forecast from 2019 to 2023, or 4-year forecast, Amazon's share goes from about 7.5% to about 15%. So it's basically doubling its share. And I think the other thing that we really saw come to light this year is the rise of these retail media networks that are all modeled on Amazon. So basically you have retailers leveraging their customer data, their first party data, and just their share into these substantial advertising businesses. Amazon, being by far the biggest. So I think the extent to which Amazon is able to basically build this really, really formidable ad business. And, this is a company that until 3-4 years ago was just primarily a retailer and was only just kind of like dipping its foot into advertising and media. But now it's got a huge advertising business that's built on top of its retail platform, but also increasingly media. So, Amazon has IMDb TV, it has Twitch, it's licensing all this high-priced sports content against which they sell advertising. So there's a lot going on there that's making Amazon, as if it weren't already a force to be reckoned with in general as a company. On the advertising side, now it's definitely a key player in this triopoly.
Yeah, as you mentioned, they doubled their share 2019 to 2023 from 7.5 to 15. In that time, they quadrupled their ad revenue from 10 billion to what will be 40 billion, according to all these numbers, according to our own estimates from our own forecasting team. I mean, Paul, anything that concerns you about Amazon in the digital ad space? And, it is doing really well, but it's going up against Google and Facebook. It's no picnic.
Yeah, I mean, Amazon definitely has competition, and even in if these forecasts play out the way we expect, we're still going to look at Amazon being basically 10 percentage points behind Facebook in terms of its share of advertising. That said, I really don't think there are any significant concerns given that, this is not Amazon's core business. This is like a little side business for them.
Right, a little side hustle.
And I'm glad, Marcus, that you brought up those dollar figures quadrupling because, again, when we look at share and we look at rises and falls in these companies' shares, we think, they're going down. But really, all of these companies are going up and up and up in terms of the amount of money they're making from advertising year to year. They're exceeding the overall market, and the overall market is growing substantially. So, we're definitely seeing a big influx of, just more and more dollars being spent on digital advertising and on the kind of advertising that these companies are focusing on, which is increasingly more sort of upper funnel, video branding type advertising. But one last thing, I know I'm going on at length here, but with Amazon, they kind of have the best of all worlds because they are selling more, through their retail media network, they're selling more and more upper funnel ads, but they also have the retail infrastructure and the first party data to really turn that advertising into kind of like, a best of all worlds between upper funnel and more kind of performance based.
Yep. I mean, we talked all this episode about shares, and as we mentioned, Google is going to be ticking down, even though it's going to be holding on to number one spot in a couple of years. Facebook has been pretty much flat and will be pretty much flat going forward, but holds on to the second place medal. And then Amazon in third place is going up and will hold on to the bronze by 2023. But when you look at growth rates this year, Amazon over 50%, Google and Facebook both well over 30%, and next year healthy, pretty much all double digits nearly, and next year after that healthy growth as well. So they're all still making a ton of money. In case you're wondering who's in fourth place, Microsoft way behind in fourth place, just 3.5%. Hulu and Yahoo, they share joint fifth with 1.7%, even further back. That is all we have time for the lead. Time now for the halftime report. We'll start with Paul and then straight to Jasmine. Paul, a takeaway from Google and Amazon, if you will, and then we'll take one takeaway from Jasmine about Facebook.
The biggest takeaway to me is just the hugeness of advertising across all of these companies. I mean, everybody always says content is king, which is true, but really, I mean, the way these companies have built giant advertising businesses is amazing. Google was kind of born that way with search, but then, it's hard to think back to a time when YouTube was not an advertising behemoth because it is now, but that didn't happen by accident. And Amazon, again, it's a retailer and it's been in a lot of businesses that ostensibly didn't have a lot to do with advertising until they did.
Jasmine, how about for you, for Facebook?
Yeah, I'll echo Paul's points and also say that specifically for Facebook, I think the big takeaway is that despite all of its problems, its ad business just continues to chug along really nicely. I mean, it's making a ton of money, and it also has Instagram, which we haven't talked really about yet, but Instagram is making up a larger share of Facebook's revenues every single year, and it continues to outperform the core app.
Yeah. Just some bonus numbers for you on Instagram. 52% growth this year, 26% next year, and pretty much 20% the year after that. Again, from our wonderful forecasting team. That is all we have time for the lead. Time now for In Other News. But first, a quick word from our sponsor, Basis Technologies. Today's podcast is made possible by Basis Technologies. Basis Technologies has created a digital advertising platform that connects people, automates processes, and unifies channels, bringing together programmatic, site direct, search, social, and CTV in one single interface. And through the power of automation, Basis enable brands, agencies, and publishers to build and operate a healthy, secure, efficient, and profitable advertising organization. Ready to take control of your advertising? Just go to basis.net today. That's www.basis.net. Basis Technologies, the future of advertising has arrived. All right, folks, we are back today in other news. A TV show designed for social media and YouTube TV looking to add some more channels. Story 1. Towards the end of November, a new digital series centered around young creators called You Do You premiered on Instagram. The show is unique, though, in that it is designed for and lives on social media, Instagram in this case, not TV, writes Catherine Perloff of Adweek. Paid for by Instagram, but created by 4 Studio, Channel 4's in-house digital content studio in the UK. 4 Studio says that its goal for its clients is to raise brand awareness, but subtly speaking to audiences in their language, as they call it. The viewer doesn't know they're being advertised to. The brand is subtly placed in the show. The Adweek article explains that the show follows Cindy Splace, a group of young creatives in Manchester using Instagram to communicate with each other and the world over 4 10-minute long episodes airing between mid-November to the start of December on Channel 4's Instagram feed. Jasmine, could this be a branch of the future of advertising?
So I think this is pretty clever. We talk a lot about how advertisers need to reach their audiences where they are and how they're spending their time and speak to them in their language. And I think this is definitely, a step in that direction. I'm really curious to see what the viewership rate is and if it translates into subscribers for Channel 4. But either way, I think it's a good way to drive awareness and engagement for Channel 4 and for Instagram too. So it could be a win all around.
Story 2. YouTube TV is looking to add channels so it can make more ad dollars, notes Insider Intelligence analyst Rachel Wolf. The information reports that YouTube is chatting with Vox Media, Brat TV, Pocket.watch, and other media companies to create new channels for the platform. Rachel points out that the last available subscription figures from last year give YouTube TV somewhere between 3 to 4 million total subscribers, a lot fewer than Hulu's 44 million subscribers or Peacock's 54 million. Paul, your thoughts on this new strategy of YouTube TV adding new channels, more channels, everything?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of catch up because I think YouTube was not a big innovator in this space. I think Roku built a really robust ad business around its hardware platform. And I think other companies are now really jumping on the advertising video on demand or AVOD bandwagon like Pluto TV and Tubi. So I think YouTube is now getting into the game maybe a little bit later than they might have, considering that they've had this service now for, 3 or 4 years. But, what it does tell you is that there's a lot of money to be made in packaging this content basically on an ad-supported basis for viewers when you have a platform that already has a big built-in audience.
My question is, how many more channels do they add before they're just cable on the internet?
Well, that's a good question. And, I'm of the school of thought that all of these digitally delivered live TV services like YouTube TV and Hulu with Live TV are really, if they're not already like a cable bundle, they're fast on their way to becoming that way in terms of, channel offerings, in terms of even pricing. What they have that cable still doesn't have and never will is just the flexibility of allowing people to subscribe and unsubscribe and, kind of be more flexible in how they view. But in almost every other respect, including these carriage disputes now with networks, I think we're looking at a new way of, or kind of like, the old media packaged in a new way.
Mm-hmm. And that is all we have time for. Thank you so much to my guests. Thank you to Jasmine.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks to Victoria. She edits the show. Thanks to everyone listening. See you tomorrow, hopefully, for the Behind the Numbers Weekly Listen, the Marketer podcast made possible by Basis Technologies.